Welcome, nutritionradio.org listeners. This is Lonnie Lowry, a university nutrition professor of over 20 years and podcast host of long-running shows like Iron Radio. Come on in.
Hey everybody, welcome to Season 2 of Nutrition Radio. We have 4 segments for you today, like we often do. We have a food trend. We're going to actually check in with Food Network and see 3 things from their list that they feel we need, we want, we jones for. It's a little bit different than our usual food markets. In our science clip, we've got water fasting. We're going to go to one of the labs that are very famous for looking at intermittent fasting. It's gotten negative press lately, but it's also a big thing. I mean, it's even part of the MyFitnessPal app as an option. So it's pretty widespread. Then we have a listener question, and then we're going to wrap up with a rant from Crystal. So let's get started.
Market news, food and fitness trends.
Okay, this first piece is from Heath Goldman for Food Network Kitchen. It starts off by saying, each year Food Network editors spend months compiling data and getting insights on some of these trends. They include TikTok, how ubiquitous it's become. In fact, they say that Gen Z creators are being skyrocketed to fame, changing the way that food trends start and spread. I have my critiques about that, but okay. 3 things, though, that I'm going to pull from this list, the first 3, and we'll see, if this resonates with you. Number 1, we're all craving nostalgic food, as in, what's your favorite childhood treat? One of the things I used to do in the classroom was talk about what are your comfort foods and discomfort foods, right? Things you just don't like, and oftentimes these trace back to your childhood. They say since the pandemic, many Americans, particularly some of these content creators, are turning to brands and dishes that remind them of their past. Examples include apple hand pies, pizza toast, and everything in between, according to this article. Even brands are getting involved. Apparently, s'mores-flavored foods, they're sort of a camping, youthful kind of thing, were big at this year's Sweets and Snack Expo. What else do we have on the list here? Just add water. Instant concentrates and pastes, I guess, are kinder to the environment, and that's a value to a lot of people. It says you'll notice more foods and cleaning products are being sold as powders or pastes. CPG, right, consumer packaged good companies, use less water or none at all to cut down on shipping costs or greenhouse gas emissions. A lot of people are sensitive to the environment now. Just from a consumer advocate point of view, I like the idea that you're actually getting a better value in a sense. You're not paying for the water part of it. You can just add your own much more cheaply. It says, case in point, Kellogg's recently released Just Add Water cereal bowls that have powdered milk in them, apparently, call them Insta Bowls. So Just Add Water, it's a trend. Have you seen that? I think I actually have quite a bit. We've got these greens products. Crystal and I have been talking about things of that nature. And last up from the Food Network trends, honey alternatives. It says, according to the Good Food Institute, the sales of plant-based foods grew 3 times faster than overall food sales in 2021. Vegan honey alternatives comprise a growing category driven in part by bee colony collapse disorder. These include cane and coconut nectar, date syrup. We even had a recent tip from listener Gabby about checking out agave syrup for its increased sweetness because of its fructose content. People have different ideas about fructose, but it is very sweet, which could equal less use. So there's 3 trends from Food Network: nostalgic foods, just add water, and honey alternatives.
Breaking nutrition science.
Okay, in the science category here, science news from the University of Illinois, Chicago. Fasting can help you lose weight, but you might gain it back quickly. It says water fasts, where people consume nothing but water for several days, might help you lose weight, but it's unclear how long you'll keep it off, according to new research. The metabolic benefits of water fasts, like lower blood pressure or lower cholesterol, disappear soon after the fast ends. Now, anybody who's familiar with physiology probably agrees with that. Anyway, it says, however, there do not appear to be any serious adverse effects for those who do a water fast or some similar fast with tiny bits of juice, for example. Says Krista Varady, professor of kinesiology and nutrition, who led this research and was published in Nutrition Reviews. She stressed, however, no one should undertake these fasts for more than 5 days without medical supervision. The reason she even got into this topic was because apparently journalists were pestering her about it, and she thought, well, we need some evidence to comment on this stuff. The new paper is a lit review of 8 studies where they used water fasting primarily, also some of these tiny amount of juice studies. It says fasting did seem to spur noticeable short-term weight loss. People who fasted for 5 days lost 4 to 6% of their weight. Now, of course you would. If you're going to move around and use up your muscle glycogen, that's stored with water, 3 grams of water for each gram of glycogen. So, yeah, you're going to lose some weight. Some of that was fat, but a lot of that's going to be water weight and glycogen, I would think, stored carbs. It says, of the studies that they looked at, in one of them, people gained back all they had lost in the 5-day water fast within 3 months. In 2 other studies, only a small amount of the weight returned, but those studies also encouraged participants to reduce their intake in a kind of an ongoing way, right, even after the fast. And then again, it points out the metabolic benefits disappear very quickly, blood pressure, blood sugar. And again, I'm not that surprised by that. Of course, your blood sugars are going to run lower when you're not eating any carbohydrates. Now, as far as side effects, as the most common ones, similar to those with intermittent fasting, Varady said, headaches, insomnia, hunger, obviously hunger, I would think. She did note participants in these prolonged fasts lost about 2/3 of their weight as lean mass. Now, I found that poorer than typical. That's almost the reverse of normally what you'll see, where a little bit more, or even 2/3 of the loss is fat. So this might not be a good idea, maybe because of the lack of protein intake. Oh, here it is. This is the opposite of what happens most of the time during weight loss, where more fat is lost than muscle. Brady said she would encourage someone hoping to lose weight to try intermittent fasting instead of these more extended water fasts. So there's a little bit of science in the news. I know this gets a lot of attention. I think there are individual differences here. Some of this seems a little obvious, but again, it's a trend, and some of the journalists are pestering the scientist about it. So we thought we'd cover it in the news.
A listener question of the week.
Okay, marching through here. We don't have a co-host to chat with, so it's going to go a little quicker than usual. But we got a question from Craig via YouTube. I watched The Game Changers recently, and years ago I watched Forks Over Knives. What episodes do you address the science of plant-based diets? Years ago I read The Blood Type Diet. I have type A blood, which the doctor recommended the vegan option. I never did it because I lift and I ate meat. I'm thinking of giving the plant-based diet a try. What episodes do you recommend I listen to where you cover plant-based diets? Now, Craig, I'm going to go down a list of some of the topics that we've actually touched on before. You might want to start with something like the review number 4. We did a mushroom jerky taste test with Michelle Blakely just for fun, just taking a look at sort of alternatives to meat in that way. One of the things that I think about with these documentaries, they can be a little bit cherry-picked and one-sided, to be completely honest. We did episode 4, What is Quality Evidence? It came right from a university lecture. It helps you kind of clue in on red flags when people are cherry-picking or trying to make a point instead of a balanced view of the literature. Episode 4 might help with that. Episode 22 might interest you. Purple fruits and veg for carb control. Some of the purple plants in particular may be helpful metabolically, and we talk about that in episode 22. In episode 29, more basics. This is sort of like the quality evidence one in episode 4. In episode 29, we did tools for designing a healthy diet. Also straight from a university lecture on, how do you go about setting up a diet? What is a rational, healthy diet? There's tools out there. I would suggest you could go check that out. If you're concerned about pesticides or anything like that, we covered the Dirty Dozen list for 2023. The Dirty Dozen is just a list that comes out every year as far as what plants might have the most pesticides, what you might want to be careful. In episode 73, we did the truth about fiber. This is going to be a big one about plants. Plants are going to provide fiber and essentially very low calorie, prebiotic benefits, tons of stuff about fiber in episode 73. And then lastly, in episode 87, we did breaking research on meatless muscle growth. I'm not personally a big fan of plant proteins. I don't always eat enough protein, at least not enough for me. I try to get that, 1.6 to 1.8 grams per kg, even up to a gram per pound. If I'm not getting that, I don't really want to eat lower quality proteins. Now, if you're getting way over the RDA, you're probably fine as long as you eat a wide variety and you eat more. The gains you can make in the gym can be just fine when you look at it chronically, even with these lower quality plant proteins. What I thought was cool about this one, about this episode 87, was that the breaking research was on fungal proteins, myco, M-Y-C-O proteins, and how they are an interesting option, more complete than some of the plant proteins. So pretty cool option there for people who are interested. Now, as far as a blood type diet, I can't say I'm a huge fan. I've just never seen much evidence for it. In fact, if you go to health.harvard.edu and you check out the Harvard Medical School input on this, it says diet not working. Maybe it's not your type. And this is by Robert H. Schmerling. He's an MD, senior faculty editor of Harvard Health Publishing. Anyway, a couple of things that he says here kind of sum up my thoughts on this. It says, a 2013 study analyzed the world's medical literature and found no studies demonstrating a benefit from a blood type diet. The 2014 study, and again, these are linked here on this page, the Harvard page. The 2014 study found that while people following any of the blood type diets had some improvement in certain cardiometabolic risk factors, such as cholesterol or blood pressure, those improvements were unrelated to blood type. Similarly, a 2021 study of people on a low-fat vegan diet found no connection between blood type and lipid levels or other metabolic measures. So in other words, although you can see some logic and, it's sort of a science-y storytelling behind some of these blood type diets, the evidence just doesn't seem to be there. I'm going to trust some of these sites like Harvard, especially like when they're directly linking to some of these studies that they just don't see, even though it's logical, it may not be physiological, if that makes any sense. It just doesn't seem to really be the mechanism by which some of these diets work or don't work. Now, let me be fair. I haven't read that book. As a physiologist, I don't see any particular link. The 2013 paper is by Layla Cusack. If you go to the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, which is the premier journal in nutrition, the title is Blood Type Diets Lack Supporting Evidence, a Systematic Review. So again, I haven't looked at those books, but when I see papers like this, it makes me think there's probably better ways, to focus your attention as opposed to something that's got a good, logic maybe behind it or some interesting theories behind it, but not hard data suggesting that this is going to be the linchpin that you should choose your diet. I hope that makes sense. I will check that out, though.
Rant product review or recipes.
So I know you had a rant, Chrissy. What's your rant?
All right, so my rant, and this is something that is very physical therapy assistant, specified, is physical therapy and insurance as far as, what is more important, the insurance payment or patient care. And I know it's been something that I have quite a few nurses and things like that, and I know a ton of physical therapists and physical therapist assistants right now that are debating, the APTA, so the American Physical Therapy Association. This is a problem that we've been having. Insurance coverage right now it's ridiculous. So for those that don't know a whole lot, as far as therapies go, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and physical therapy all are covered under the same umbrella of money through insurances right now. I believe the amount is, let's say it's $2,500. I think it's right around there. But that is divided into these three therapies. So what's been happening more recently than not is that, PT, OT, speech, we're all sharing our time and our money taking care of the same patient. So for, let's say, somebody that has recently had a CVA, a stroke, they are going to need speech therapy. They're going to need occupational therapy, and they need physical therapy. 3 different types of therapy, which are all very essential to this patient becoming more functional than what they are currently due to their stroke. Who do we give more attention to? What seems to be more important? How do you make that decision? Unfortunately, a lot of times it comes down to the insurance.
Okay. So if you can clarify for me. So this decision becomes more about what the insurance company is willing to do versus what even the doctor wants, right? Because let's say the doctor's overseeing all this and she's like, we need to allocate this much rehab to each of these professions. It could be the insurance company that's really saying, no, we're not going to do exactly what the doctor wants. Is that possible? Does that happen?
So I'm currently in a clinical rotation right now, and we've had this discussion also in classes and things like that. So yeah, basically it's the doctor saying that this patient needs occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. The insurance says, all right, that's fine, but I am only allocating this much money for this patient to receive this 3-sectional care.
Right.
And it's difficult because, I mean, before, and even when I went through physical therapy, in an outpatient facility, I'd spend about an hour with my physical therapy assistant, whichever one. Now treatment times are getting cut. It's 20, 30-minute sessions. What can you do in those 20, 30-minute sessions? And these are, again, more specifically for patients that have other therapies that they have to go through for occupational and speech. But, times are getting cut short. So as far as patient care, if a patient's only seeing a physical therapist for 20 minutes, a speech therapist for 20 minutes, and an occupational therapist for 20 minutes, how much work are they actually able to do in that 20 minutes?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I heard a guy online, he's a political commentator, and he said he was referring to insurance companies, and this is my personal bias, but as well, and I'm kind of agreeing with what he was saying, but he said insurance companies are like a middleman that tries to get between you and your HCP, right? They're trying to get between you and your physician or you and your physical therapist or whatever it might be. That's a problem, right? Because I get insurance plays its role, but when they're calling the shots and affecting patient outcomes, this is something my wife actually says all the time. She's a licensed counselor, and we always talk about the danger of profits over patients, or trying to save money at the expense of patient outcomes and that kind of thing. And that seems to be what you're talking about, right? You get this external, this third party that gets in between the patient and the doctor. This is covered, that's not covered. We're only going to give you so much money and therefore time. Yeah, and then the concern would be poorer outcomes, right, for the patients.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just concerning because especially with how the world is right now, the increased need in healthcare. If patients aren't getting the healthcare, though, that they need, what really are we doing?
Yeah. You would think in the long run it would cost more money if people end up not getting the outcomes that they need and then they just end up back in therapy or something like that. I mean, I don't even know if that can happen if they're putting caps on the amount of money and time that each patient gets. But yeah, you got to think that in the long run, getting proper treatment and instead of relying on an insurance company, and they might have some HCP, some physician or someone deciding what gets covered and what doesn't, but you shouldn't have to argue every step of the way. That's my gripe with a lot of this, is that I feel like in this late stage capitalistic society we're in, everything gets commoditized. And a negative view of this would be that even someone's health, it's almost like they're trying to commoditize, or it's like profitable suffering or something like that. Like we're more about the profits. Not everybody even has health insurance. Then what happens, And commoditizing people's health, I know that's a politically charged topic, but I see some problems trying to make everything a commodity. Everything is pay for this many units kind of thing.
And going back, so you had asked, if it's possible for patients, to come back after they had been dismissed or the insurance just won't pay. I've had a couple patients since I'd started with my clinical that had been cut from insurance because they weren't showing progression, but it wasn't necessarily, there's two types of clients. You're going to have your clients that want to work with you and want to get better. And then you have clients that, currently I'm in a skilled nursing facility. So I have other clients that are just there to be there. They don't have anywhere else to go. So when I had a patient recently that had gotten cut due to insurance that was making very small but gradual adjustments and changes and getting better, and insurance cut them because it wasn't fast enough.
Oh, man.
And actually, I just found out that same patient, I found out this past week, is in the hospital right now due to a fall.
Oh, see, this is exactly what we're talking about. Worse outcomes or, saving some money. Like I said, it sounds negative, but almost this like suffering for profit kind of healthcare system that we're in, because it's more about profits than patients. That's the problem. And I don't know. Do you think that's a common thing that you just told me, or do you think that's a really rare outlier that happens?
I've been kind of doing more research on it since I had been starting in this program, and it's looking to be more of a common thing. And again, that's not to say that patients that aren't willing to put in work aren't also getting cut, because they are. It's just, I think it's more noted when it's a patient that has been trying to progress and put in work, getting cut, and then something worse happening.
Well, let me ask you one last thing about this. This is your rant, but do you find competition then with the other HCPs? Like, do you have the speech pathologist or the whoever else is involved in this lump sum of money? Are you guys competing against each other then, or is everybody just cranky against the insurance companies and you're all on the same team?
So for the most part, I think it's just everybody being cranky towards the insurance companies. Currently, where I'm at, it's been kind of a hotter discussion just because of the amount of patients that they have. But there's been a lot of COTA, so co-treatments with either occupational or speech therapy that my PTA that I've been working with has been doing. And it's hard, though, too, because we're doing a lot of work that the OT should be doing. You know, theoretically speaking, occupational therapy is doing the getting up out of bed, getting dressed, things like that. Well, we're co-treating with them right now. So a lot of what physical therapy is doing, instead of working on the strength and endurance and that aspect of the treatment, we're helping them, you know, doing bed mobilities and getting them up and out of bed, getting them to the toilet, showing them how to utilize the toilet, how to get dressed and things like that. So I don't know necessarily that it's a bad thing that to be working as a team. I just feel for the patient's progression. What good is it getting two completely different therapies working on the same patient to learn how to put on a shirt?
Right. It sounds like you guys are trying to adjust and compensate for this bad situation that the insurance companies have put you in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that.
Of course.
Okay, everybody. That's going to be it for today's episode. We'll be back next week for 4 more segments like this, and we'll see you then. The NutritionRadio.org podcast is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, check with your physician, nutritionist, or qualified exercise physiologist in order to make the progress that you need.